There's a certain tension, I believe, in the relationship that the disciples have with Jesus, the way that the evangelists talk about Jesus. Because even if in him humanity and divinity were one and complete and not overlapping but whole, like we can't experience that completely now. And so most days, though Jesus is the Son of God, most days there were few clues, right? Sometimes he would heal someone, or his words were particularly charismatic. His generous spirit was more loving than they had known. But to get from there to divine is quite a step. Most days, I think they thought of him as one of themselves, primarily, maybe special, but one of themselves, one of their own. And then there's these other moments, like the Transfiguration that we read today, where Peter, all three really, completely forget that Jesus is their friend, that he's human, that he's one of them, and they're scared to death of this encounter with the divine. And maybe there's some resolution in the end when they kind of come to their senses and find that it's just Jesus with them. That there's some resolve to the tension. But it's still the tension of the scriptures, of the gospel stories. And I'd suggest it's also the tension of our experience of the body of Christ, of the church, of religion. On the one hand, like, we're all about divinity and the divinity of Jesus and the sacred, and like nothing we do would make any sense if Jesus isn't the Son of God. But on the other hand, that encounter, that experience is only useful for us insofar as it completely connects with our humanity. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories and pretend that the stories we tell ourselves are encounters. But that leaves us as hollow as the booths, the tents that Peter wanted to build on the top of the mountain. I remember when I was first ordained, Father Tony Peshik, my first pastor, assigned me to take care of the women's Acts retreat. I had just started and was in way over my head, but we had a great weekend and I learned a million things and we had a great time. And I remember after the return mass, I was kind of hanging out with all the families, and one of the women came up to me just beaming with gratitude and said, "It's just, Father Martin, you're so human." And I understand that it was a high compliment, and I even know what she intended to say by it. But for me, having lived at that point in my life about 27 years of solid humanity, I didn't. All I could say was like, "Yeah, pretty sure I'm 100% human." But it's in our humanity that we connect to the divine, because we have no other way to connect to anything except for in our humanity. One of my parochial vicars years later said something along the lines to me. He was talking, he'd run into some bump in the road, and he said, "Well, yeah, sometimes it's okay for the people to see our human side." And I turned to him, I said, "Father, like, which other side were you going to show them? Like, do you have some other side that I don't know about? Probably not divine, but alien, or like, of course we are human, and Jesus is completely human, also completely divine, which we can't completely grasp. And our church encounters, our encounters with the Lord, have to connect with our humanity. And so we're in this Lenten time, like we were talking last week, of remembrance, of a God who remembers his faithfulness, of a God who remembers his covenant, his love, who remembers us. And we're invited into that memorial with God so that his memory can bless us. But that memorial has to be a human memorial, if all we have are 2,000-year-old stories, then all we have are 2,000-year-old stories. They're not encounters. But the encounters that God lays out in our lives, oftentimes in that tension, too human for us to recognize easily as being divine. But in Lent, we're invited to remember that they are. That those just mundane and basic moments, when it's just Jesus, and in my life or your life, that might be just John or just Susan. It might be just my children or just my spouse or just that coworker I can barely stand. But in those encounters where God's love is made present, is real, that we can know the divine. And there might be some moments of transfiguration on mountains. They have their purpose. But day by day, the hill of Calvary will mean more to us than the hill of transfiguration. And we'll find God more completely, especially in those human struggles that make love more present, more concrete, more real. Because love is divine. Because God is love, and every encounter, every expression, every time we receive or give real love, we've encountered God. And those encounters, in the tension of our lives, are where true religion is found. More so than the scriptures that stand as guideposts and show us how to walk along this path. So for our Lenten journey, may we have the courage to embrace this tension in our lives, the tension between the human and the divine. Yeah, we're just human, right? But God is divine and will use us to share and help us to receive his divinity and his salvation.